6 o'clock. I would like to start with amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda from the council, please? Hearing none. Presentation by citizens. This is the presentation from the citizens on the agenda items, which is only one item under new business. Is there any comments? If you'd like to make a comment, would you please go to the chat room and post your question or raise your hand so I can unmute you. Any comments? Last call, any comments, amendments, presentation by citizens on the agenda items? Anybody who would like to comment, go to the chat room and post a question or post your name and I will unmute you. Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on. New business. New business, discussion of proposal to develop a partnership with the apartment complexes in the Harbison area. First of all, thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm not gonna go down a list of everybody who's on this call right now, but it's a number of people. This is open to the public. This is gonna be public information. Over the last few weeks, the Irmo Town Council, the Irmo Police Department, City of Columbia Police Department, Richland County, Harbison Gardens, Paces Brook and Waters Edge communities, and Harbison Association have all gotten together and talked about the issues of the violence that's been happening in the Irmo area, Irmo community, directly affecting the Irmo community. Specifically, the problems that we've had over in Carmel Commons, Beacon Hill, Settlers Point, those areas directly coordinating, directly contiguous to Harbison Gardens, as well as in Archer's Court along the path that we have that runs through our community. During that conversation, we've discovered that most of the violence and most of the mischief that are going on in the car break-ins are from juveniles. And we define juveniles as anybody that's under 17 years old and below. What that means is if they are juveniles and they're considered to be juveniles, if they're caught breaking into cars or if they're caught vandalizing personal property, they're not treated as adults. They don't go to big boy jail. They are put into the family court system, which means that they get arrested, but most of the times they are, I guess, booked, charged with a crime, go to family court, and then they return home to their parents by the end of the day. So they don't spend time locked up and incarcerated. What that does is it lets the kid go back into the same community where they came from, and 9 times out of 10, they go back and do something else, and it's a revolving circle. We found that out to be the case on most of these incidents that occurred. Now, in the conversation we had with the 3 apartment complexes, Harbison Gardens, Waters Edge, and Paces Brook, and I apologize for not knowing the new name of that complex, but we found that a lot of the things are stemming from kids doing stuff in those communities and not having some meaningful way to engage themselves. What we did find out is that there is a number of people that want to do things to engage these students so that they stay out of trouble, engage them into activities that are positive to them, to their community, positive for them, and make sure that they have an ability to do things that are constructive. And we want to help them. And that's one of the things that we got out of that, these conversations we had. Before I turn over this part of the meeting to Dr. Akil Ross, I wanted to ask any of the council people if they would chime in, and start with you, Bill. If you would chime in on your observation of what we have discovered and found through our previous meetings. So Councilman Danielson, do you want to?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think our meetings over the last two have been very fruitful. We have between meeting with the apartments and Harbison Gardens included in that, everyone's pulling the wagon in the right direction and in the same direction. I really truly believe that. I came out of those two meetings very buoyed by the positive potential work that we can do. It's really kind of exciting. And to be perfectly frank with you, I didn't go into those meetings thinking that I would be a huge supporter of getting in there, boots on the ground, and I was more concerned with security and safety than really not looking at the major issue, which is education and getting these kids, off the street and something to do. So I'm happy that everybody's going the right direction. Mr. Ross, I haven't really met him yet. I hope to some point meet him. I know we will. I think that we've made some positive strides. What I did learn, which you just mentioned, we all learned, is it's a small core group. It's like I refer them to cabals. It's like a little cabal of guys that are just going around. It's the same people over and over. And at this point, there's really no judicial system that's going to hold them or do anything with them but kick them back to mom and dad. So I think that's a big deal. I think we're on the right track. I think I had postponed the meeting tonight that we were supposed to have for the Irmo Future Growth Corporation because we pushed it to next week, and I would like to have Mr. Ross sit in anytime. Love you to come in next week. Anybody else who's interested can certainly come. We do meet live. But my point of doing that was to get more of this meeting under our belts, because I think we will, one of the things that Barry and I talked about, and I think Councilman Bush talked about this with him, about pulling this, whatever we do, the management of this partnership that we're talking about tonight, pulling it into the Irmo Future Growth Committee Corporation, so that, we have some second or third party fiscal oversight, which I think is key to anybody running a project like that. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about Mr. Ross's presentation last week with the, you got to trick them, you trick them. It doesn't matter how you do it. You got to get them on the field. So I like that. I've reached out to a lot of civic organizations. They all want to be helpful. All we had to do was ask them. I kind of ran on that when I was out there talking about civic involvement. It's a lot harder to throw rocks at a house if the guy's in a classroom with you after hours helping you do stuff. So we've got buy-in from a lot of different places. Councilman Bush and I also talked about the property that Dr. Gurm is giving us. We could do garden work there. There's a potential, that could be a potential to put a Butler building up over there at some point. There's a whole lot of things we can do. So I'll ramble, and I'm sorry, but I'm excited about it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Bill, you're not rambling. It's just that we're so excited about this partnership we're going to develop
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Bill. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I am ecstatic. Councilman Bush, would you like to comment on anything that you observed over the last couple of weeks in the meetings we had?
I think in the interest of time, the distinguished gentleman, Mayor Barry and Councilman Bill have covered most everything. So I'll leave it with that. I'm very excited as well, though. So.
Thank you. Councilman Sickinger, are you there? Are you ready? Or would you like to comment on anything we might have missed?
I don't think I have any That was a good summary. I don't think I have anything of value to add.
All right, and Councilwoman Condon, do you have anything you'd like to add?
If there is an answer, I think this is it. So I'm all for it.
Cool. Well, there you have the entire council just commented on this whole project. Now, what is the project? You're asking yourselves. What did we talk about for the last 3 meetings, 3 weeks? And I'm going to have Dr. Akil Ross come in and do his presentation. And if you will, Dr. Ross, please explain to us, to the whole group, what you're going to do and how this is going to work. And at the end, folks, I will encourage you to save your questions until the end so we can get those answered and not leave here with any misconception or misunderstanding. Please take notes, and Dr. Ross, if you will, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Walker, to members of the Irmo Council, members of our community. I am a educator, former principal, and was principal at Chapin, but I live in Irmo. Irmo is my home. My children go to Irmo schools. And when asked by Mayor Walker, what could we do? I looked at research and I wanted to present evidence-based strategies that I think would work. And we know when students are involved with after-school programs, incarceration and crime go down. And just as evidence of that, I want you to consider this: a 50% increase in after-school or out-of-school programming yields a 70% decrease in juvenile arrests. This data is over 5,000 police departments across the country to find out that between the hours of 2 to 6, if you can occupy the students between 12 and 18 with something constructive, it has a dramatic effect on decreasing criminal behaviors, but also increasing academics, improving the positive behaviors, and helping us in prevention. And so why not employ that here, that research, this evidence-based strategies to the issues we're seeing. And so the proposal that is up for your consideration is what's called a youth zone. The notion of a youth zone is pulling together a community. There is a direct correlation. Kids within the crime curve, and Chief Dennis can correct me if I'm wrong here or add to that, but kids within that crime curve, in that time, if they're occupied in something structured, then they have something to do. What we find out, and talking to Mark Smyers of Irmo Chapin Recreation Committee, the kids, especially within the Harvest and Gardens area, are sitting in a zone where there are not a lot of services. It's not being met by, they're outside of the line for ICRC. They're on the further edge of Richland County Recreation. There's not a lot for them to engage in. So let's be in, this plan is about us being deliberate to provide them a high quality program that keeps them occupied. Schools have them from 8 to 3. This program is designed to take them from 3 to 8. If they're accounted for and doing something constructive, then we know that we'll be able to make not only a reduction in crime, but an increase in the positive behaviors that we want to see. And so here's an overview of the work zone. We're looking for free and affordable after-school activities made available for middle and high school students. If you look at the data from those who are involved in the recreation centers, we see a drop-off after the age of 12. As a result, we need to restructure the type of programming we have that would bring those students back in. What does the research say? The research says if you really want to see that 70% or greater decrease in negative activities, they need to engage at least 4 days a week for 2.5 hours a day. That's the vision of where we want to get to. We're not going to start off there, but that's the intent that the youth zone would focus on. So what's our mission? It's to ensure 100% of all youth especially in that 12 to 18 age group, are enrolled in after-school or summer enrichment programs. To do this, we need three basic things. One, identify the students in need of out-of-school enrichment. That means we need to know our children in our community. Sometimes it's just knowing exactly who that we need to put a hand on that makes the difference. Establish partnerships with providers that provide these enrichment opportunities, and then secure funding to provide youth access. And so looking for private partners or sponsors of this, that's something, and I'm glad, Bill, that you talked about the Irmo Future Growth Initiative, because we're going to need something behind this to keep it going. I don't believe it needs a lot of overhead. I believe every dollar needs to go right into programming, but we do need something to make sure it's sustained. So with everything, as a principal, I believe in action plans and action steps. And I believe there's three main action steps that we need to develop here. The first one is the most important. If we can identify the children, to know who they are, where they are, and who's in need, we're halfway over the battle. I want to thank Natasha Thompson and Patricia Richmond and Brian Shumway with Harbison Gardens. They worked really hard to get me some data as a baseline. So our benchmark right now, we know there's between 142 to 150 students within that target zone. And so my goal is to initially make sure we can have programming that would meet every student within that group. And then our strategy is just basically monitoring how many of that 150 students do we have participating in our programs. That participation percentage tells us a lot, who's engaged. And we can measure that growth over time to report back to the mayor and this body just how important it is. If this program is not effective, then we can pivot at that point because we have a measure for action step one. Action step two would be now creating the network of providers. Throwing one program at this is not going to work. It has to be a network working together to identify. As Mayor Walker told me, he said, you have some students who are going to be very interested in the arts program or the technology program or the sports, but they're not going to be in all of them. So do we have something that fits every student? If we're targeting 142 students, do we have something that they're going to want to be involved with? As a commissioner on the Irmo Chapin Recreation Commission, I see the data of the drop-off after age of 13. And so now we have to be very creative about what kind of programming do we need that will bring them back into that after-school piece. Creating the MOUs is basically our benchmark. And then to monitor growth for accountability, to report back to this body, I recommend what I call an involvement index. And that's basically looking at the number of programs we have and then how well they're attended and how frequently. Reporting that increase over time lets us know how effective we are. And so if we have a lot of participation from a minority or from a few students and it's not, then we know we need to increase our programming and improve our programming. If students are just not coming, then we know that we need to do a better job of targeting. So these two numbers kind of give us a way to examine how effective this program is. And then step three is to secure funding. Well, we haven't talked about where this would come from. I think I do want to thank Beth DeRitter from the Mungo Foundation for actually putting seed money to some programming that we'll do at Harbison Garden. And while I'm thanking people, Elizabeth Taylor, who was a very visionary about setting up what we want to call the Youth Zone Advisory Committee. And this will be people in our community who know of different things that we can do, new programming, bringing together all different resources to bear on this initiative. And so that group would help us develop the advisory committee would help us develop a budget. and then solicit funds for this. And the funding would, the accountability for these funds would be based off of the participation percentage in the involvement index. We know that we're in new times with COVID-19, so we have programming that would be while we're in this pandemic, and then we would expand once the COVID-19 issues are no longer with us. And so using the recommendations that come from DSS and DHEC, we would ensure that our protocols and safety precautions are being followed for the youth that are in the youth zone. So the model would be to assign a director. Again, this is, I'll volunteer into this position until someone better can take over. But just to get us started, if this body so sees fit to move forward. And that would to make sure that we have any donations that we go through can go to these providers. And then there'll be public funds that will not flow through this, but the director can help coordinate the movement of students that would make sure that we have 100% of that 142 students involved. Here's something important about the programming. We have to move from this being a notion of fixing problems to building on strengths. Any programs that we put in, if it's, kids say, well, you're a problem and we need you in this program, then they're not gonna participate. But if it's something that says, I'm gonna build on the strength that you have, they're willing to engage. It's not so much reacting to negative behaviors that we're after, but more so being proactive and building on specific outcomes. It can't be you or marketed as targeting troubled youth, more as engaging all youth. It's very important with this age group how it's branded, and their identity is very important to them. And so if we call the youth zone something for troubled youth, and they're like, I'm not that, I'm not going to engage. But if it's for all youth, we want 100% of them, then yes, we get the students who really need to be in there, but we develop everyone else. And so understanding how important peer groups, identity construction is for this age, these are certain things that the programming needs to be considerate of. Also, moving from these students as being recipient of services to being proactive participants. I think that's one of the things that we need to make sure that students understand is, tell me, what do you want? What are some programming that you would like to be in? And then we help build around it. And last, really about building relationships. And so, again, I like using evidence-based information. This comes from research of successful after-school programs for young adults from Cornell University. And so the first program that we're going to start, we're actually starting the week of the 27th, July 27th at Harbison Gardens, is Arts to Algorithm. Following that, the Cornell research, this is a program that takes the kids' love of music and DJing, and it teaches them computational skills for computer science. They go through 4 units using the DJ board as the tool to learn decomposition, pattern recognition, abstraction. And at the end, what's so exciting about this program is the children who are engaged in this work will also learn Python, a programming language for web pages and apps. So they get a skill that is really in high need in today's marketplace. So other youth zone enrichment options. Mayor Walker has talked a lot about employment opportunities with public works types of pieces, career workshops. I already have volunteers said, hey, look, I could do a day on how to tie a tie or interview skills, career counseling, family workshops. There's so much we can embed in it, but the network is most important. Establishing that and having a community that says we're going to engage in a youth zone for Irmo, South Carolina. So if there are any people who are interested, want to serve on advisory, have ideas or recommendations, this is my email. Again, I'm Akil Ross, and my educational firm is called Heart Ed. So that's my email. You can get in touch with me. But this is something that I appreciate Mayor Walker giving us the opportunity to present to you. And at this point, I will conclude my remarks and stand for questions.
Well, thank you very much. And it was a very detailed presentation. Council, again, this is an opportunity to build, like Dr. Akil Ross said, build relationships up, building on the strengths of our community and what we have to offer. And this is open to all of the apartment complexes, but not limited to the apartment complexes in the Harbison area. If there's some students in Arches Court that wants to take advantage of this program, I'm sure we can accommodate them also, and people inside the Irmo community. After we get this pilot programs established, I can't see why we can't transfer it over to the Richland County Recreation Center over there off of Chadford Road and do another pilot project over there and do the same thing that we're doing over here in Harbison Gardens. So it's not us getting involved at this level is not a unilateral approach to this one area. We want this to be a pilot project throughout the Irmo community, and more frankly, to be a positive pilot project that we can work on and have it transferable to any parts of our community. With that said, is there any comments from council? Mr. Danielson, and I'll start with you. What, you have any more comments?
No, I don't really have any more. I'm impressed with certainly the presentation that Akil just put on. I would love to have that PowerPoint emailed to me if you could, Akil.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to have that. I'm just excited that we can get a lot of different people involved in this program. And yeah, you've highlighted the musician one, but my mind runs in lots of different directions. Maybe there's a lot of orchestral kids. I happen to sit on the board of the South Carolina Philharmonic. I have for years, and they love to come out and work with kids and one-to-ones and there's so many opportunities that we can do to with 142 children. You could have 70 or 50 different programs, ultimately small little pockets if it comes to that. But we're going to need somebody like you to run this thing, dude. It's just going to happen. Somebody's going to have to run it, because it could get, it could go too fast, and we got to rein it back in. That's what I'm worried about. So
yes, sir.
I'll do whatever you need me to do on my end.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the support.
Okay.
Okay, Mr.
Can I ask a question? Could I ask a question?
Sure, Mr. Moore.
Thing I've heard in a long, long time. I love this. I think this is just great. Would there be any way that we could get the citizens, Carmel Commons, integrated into this system to where we basically establish like a big brother, big sister situation, to where, the people who actually live in Carmel Commons maybe, adopt one of the students for after school tutoring. You come from school, you got nobody at home, mom and dad are both working, come over to my house for milk and cookies, and I'll help you with your homework. I know there are a lot of older people over in Carmel Commons who would love an opportunity to get involved with kids. If we had 10 or 12 families like that, my God, somebody's gonna break into a car. Heck no, that's Mrs. Jones. She's my friend. Is something like that possible?
Mr. Moore, I really appreciate you bringing that up. When I talked to Natasha Moore at the property manager at Harbison Gardens, I asked her, what were the needs? What do the children need? And she said, mentorship, attention, structure, and role models. And so you hit the nail on the head. The beautiful thing about the network is that now we know our children. And one of the number one discipline tools we tell teachers, you want to have discipline of your classroom, know the child's name. And so by knowing who the 142 are, by engaging them, Natasha has been very helpful with this by saying, hey, when you move in to our apartment complex, here's the packet of our youth zone. So here are the people that are there. You can reach out to them. And then now we can connect to different people on that list to say, all right, this person is willing to be a mentor. Here's the connection. And so I think the beautiful thing is now we have now put a circle around, we've using that village concept, very targeted and specific to the children that we need to serve.
You know, the concept to me is instead of building a wall or an electric fence between Carmel Commons and the project, walls, we could be building gates where they can get back and forth easier to the mentors and to the people who are helping to provide afternoon structure. You know, it's if we had people who were willing to serve as mentors from Carmel Commons or other places, and every day after school, I expect you to be here and I expect you to bring your books and you're going to be using my kitchen table and I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to help you read. I'm going to help you write. I'm going to help you grow. And by the way, what you doing Saturday afternoon, you know, go to the ball game, let's do this, that, and the other. If you establish the friendships between these kids who need friends desperately, and the people, I don't know how you coordinate that, but I'm certain that there are people over in Carmel Collins who would love to get involved to help underprivileged youth. But that's just me. Thanks.
Well, I think
Jake, I'm sorry, Akil, but I've already talked to a handful of people in Carmel Commons who are ready to go. I mean,
Awesome.
literally had this conversation.
Yeah.
So
There are 7 retired teachers in Carmel Commons
Right.
that taught my children. I know where they all are. You know, that's a good group.
And we're going to
I
have,
guarantee you, you got a bunch of those kids over there who are friends with the older people who are retired in Carmel Collins. Thomas, you ain't gonna have any more break-ins. They'll stop that nonsense.
well, not only Carmel Commons, you got, you know, Settler Station, Beacon Hill, all those places.
Sure.
They got tons of people over there. And I know that for a fact, and Tammy's going to talk to us in the next section, Tammy Pierce, she says her church is willing to help out and do something in coordinating with that program. You know, what that is, Dr. Ross, we don't know yet, but we're going to work to make sure that it gets coordinated. Mr. Bush, or did you have any comments?
I think that Irmo Council is here to support in any way we can.
Okay.
That's all I've got.
Okay, great. Mr. Sickinger. Mr. Sickinger, do you have any comments?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I think this is an exciting thing, and I think it's something that it's really important that we really focus on success for the pilot. And I can see just from Mr. Moore's response that you don't have to be on council. You don't have to be. I think the average citizen is hasn't. If they have an opportunity to contribute and they have the desire to, I think there's going to be a thirst for them to contribute in this fashion. So fully on board.
And I also like to point something out. Dr. Ross, you mentioned having somebody that can teach you how to tie a bow tie, as simple as that. I've been on this planet for 59 years, and I learned how to tie a bow tie last year. One of your, Mr. Moore, taught me how to do that, and I was so impressed with that because I didn't know how to tie one. He sat down and showed me how to wrap it around and make it look nice. So I get it, and I think that's something we need to do. I would love to show them how to tie a regular tie and tie a bow tie when that comes up. But I say this to tell you that.
And then let me teach them how to tie a bow tie correctly after you've taught them how to do it. You probably go twice over and throw it down, right?
Hey,
So
I
I'll
get it
show them how
done.
to do it the right way.
I get it done, okay? All right. Ms. Condon, do you have anything else, or I'm going to open it up to everybody else? Right? Ms. Condon, you okay?
I'm okay. No,
Okay.
I think everything's going in the right direction. So I'm fine.
Okay, great. Well, at this part of the meeting, I want to open up to all the citizens that are chiming in or YouTubing in, Zooming in, sorry. If you have a comment, presentation by citizens on this subject or anything else you'd like to add to this, this is your opportunity to chime in and tell us. If you would, send me a chat message or who you are or what you want to talk about, and I will recognize you and unmute you. But this is a point of the meeting where you can actually ask questions. So first up is Miss Pierce, Tammy Pierce. Would you unmute yourself and tell us your comments? And tell us where you live at, Tammy. I'm sorry.
Okay. I live in the Beacon Hill area. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Okay, very good. All right, I live in the Beacon Hill area, and I have been in conference or conversations with our pastor at our church at Eastlake, and they are very, very open to coming and getting involved with the parents as well as the kids in doing some activities. I would like to see them do something with like a financial piece for the parents. And that is something that I think that we can do. I know my pastor actually grew up in St. Louis and has worked with several of the inner city housing there in St. Louis. So he has a lot of experience coming from that. He came from that himself. Also, another thing I would like to add, and Barry, you and I both being chefs, know of the Chef and Child program. And I think that would be also an excellent opportunity to maybe introduce these kids to what good nutrition is, number one. Number two, maybe a great life skill. I mean, I loved being a chef, and Barry, I know you did too, because we used to compete against each other. And and maybe have something like, have them do a dessert competition, kind of like what we did up at the Capital City Club. Get them involved, get them to where, we do have those activities. I like to see that we are going in a positive direction with this, and I think that I'm on board with this. I think this is great, and as my time is willing, I am willing to be a mentor. I've had several of these kids come through my neighborhood that I've had help me plant roses and do stuff around the house. So yeah, I'm all on board with that.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment? Brian Shumway from Wishrock. Brian, you want to unmute yourself? And
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say I'm Brian Shumway. I'm with Wishrock. We're the owners of Harvest and Gardens, and I just want to express publicly my appreciation for everybody coming together and just the great community support and the spirit with which we're addressing what has become a problem and doing things in a very constructive way and actually building community. both at Harbison Gardens and in the general area. It's a real testament to this group, and it's very exciting, and I'm glad to be a part of this all. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Shumway. I appreciate that comment. I don't see anybody from the other apartment complexes, but I do see Mr. Grove, Dave Grove from the Harbison Rec Center. Cookie or Dave or whoever's on there, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you, Master. Thank you very much, Mayor Walker. As most of you know, our community center has been closed, and unfortunately, I have no projected date for when the Harbison Community Center will reopen. But there will be a day, hopefully in the near future, where we can reopen it. And we have, as most of you probably know, we have a large gymnasium. And if there's anything the kids like, they love to come and play basketball and those kind of things. And we've tried, perhaps not as hard as we possibly will and we could have, but we've tried to engage them. And I think with what Dr. Ross is saying, if and when we do reopen, not only can we provide the facility for, say, basketball and gatherings, but we can probably tie that into some meaningful programs from that time frame, say 6 to 8:30 or so. We close the gym about 8:30 at night. And as I mentioned earlier, we also have the possibility of using 2 of our 14 passenger buses to help get the people from the apartment complexes over to Harbison and back. So we'll look into that. But again, unfortunately, I don't have a date for when the community center will reopen. The other activity that we're excited about is tennis. My limited experience on tennis, observing these kids, if you get one kid excited in playing tennis, then that young person will tell another person and another person and another person. And now they're probably neither one of them or none of them may not make the professional league, but they can certainly have a lot of fun playing tennis. And we hope to get that part of the activity going very soon with these kids. Now that is outside activities, not involved in the community center. So we may be able to do something very quickly on tennis, whereas the gymnasium obviously is indoors. So we're willing to work and help these kids. We love them. We regret that we're not having summer camp. Typically this time of year, we would have about 85 kids in here, but with the COVID-19 virus, there's no way that you can keep kids from hugging and touching each other. So, but again, we're willing to do what we can and certainly not only help Harbison Gardens, but as Mayor Walker said, all the communities around the Harbison area.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Mr. Dennis, Courtney Dennis, did you have any comments here? I didn't mean to leave you out of this. You heard everything that we're proposing tonight. You heard everything that we're planning on getting it done. What is your take as far as the Irmo PD side of coordinating all this stuff?
Well, first off, I think Dr. Ross is hitting the target audience that we are seeing commit some of the crimes in that area. The majority of the suspects that we identify in some of these cases are in that age range that you were talking about earlier, Mr. Mayor, of 17 years of age and younger. With Dr. Ross's program, I think it'll really engage that target audience that are committing some of these crimes, and that may in turn help reduce some of the crime in that area. So I'm excited to see what the results are going to be.
Cool. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Now, before we end this meeting, and again, I want to thank everybody from hearing what's going on, hearing the proposal from Dr. Ross. And by the way, Dr. Ross, we're leaving it up to you to coordinate this, okay? Whether you like it or not, you are it, okay? And I think the council will back me on that. We like your program. We like your idea. Tell us who you need to, what you need from us to make it happen. And that's where we are. And as Bill said, you know, the financial piece of that, I know he's got a group that we're working on, and they're willing to help with that part of it if you need it. Jake gave us some great ideas about getting the retired people involved, and even myself, getting me involved, you know, if not only to teach them how to tie a bow tie or a regular tie, teach them how to cook peach cobbler, you know, I can make it happen.
I'll
But
sign up for that one.
the whole idea is we are behind you on this, and we think that this is what we need to do to build our community. And I think Tammy Pierce, you'll agree with me on this. By doing these sorts of things, engaging those juveniles, we're going to tell them, look, you don't have to go out and break in a car and get some chump change out. You can work with us and you can go cut grass in the community and earn money for that. Or we'll help you with your homework and stuff. And we want you to become positive, producing citizens in the community. So to say all that, I think that we are on the right track, and I'm excited about that. Is there anybody else that want to comment before I conclude the meeting?
I
Okay,
see Al Dozier over here. It sure would be nice to have a major headline piece in the newspaper with Dr. Ross basically featured and asking people who can volunteer to do what.
yeah, you're on the spot, Al. I can't hear you. Irmo News. Take your mute off. You must not know how to work this technology, I guess. I don't know. At any rate, thank you. And again, thank everybody for chiming into this, basically a presentation of what we're going to do. I don't see nothing but positive coming from this. Now, the next step is going to be what, Dr. Ross?
So the next step is now to form the advisory, the Youth Zone Advisory Committee. This will be the group that you can email me, and I can put my email up here if you would like to serve on it. Or and basically at this point, what we're trying to do is solicit the structure. How do we structure it? How do we create a clearinghouse? Whether that's a website or for all those who want to be involved. What are the programs we're going to offer in phase one? How big are we going to make our target for phase one? So this is the time to put it together, to see, and so I'll be the contact. And then those who are willing to serve on an advisory. And again, their responsibility would be to help to organize the youth zone activities, to look for programs that we can place into, and then help us create a structure and budget. So this is the working group of that. So just email me. We'll take this ongoing. And so we're taking all of these ideas, and we're actually going to put this into an action plan website that hopefully we can put on the Irmo website. But we would like to package this to present to families for those 142, and then just start to collect data. That group would also review that data just to make sure we're on point. If we're only getting 3% of that target population, then now that advisory group can help us make some changes. Do we need to pull in a different activity? Do we need more counselors? Do we need more mentors? And now we know how to solicit through our community for help. So if you're interested in being in the Youth Zone Advisory Committee at this point, please email me, and then we'll start from there.
Okay, and thank you again. And that's the headline, Al Dozier. We're looking for a volunteer advisory committee. And again, thank you so much. All right, at this point, is there an executive session needed? We don't have an executive session scheduled. And do I have a motion for adjournment? Council,
So moved.
Mr. Sickinger made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second that.
Second, okay.
Okay, Bill Danielson seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, great. All opposed. We are now adjourned. Again, thank y'all very much for this hour-long meeting. I am happy that we have presented this to the community, and I can't wait to have a second meeting later on where we can find out where we are. Did we meet those deadlines, those kind of goalposts? And I'm again, Dr. Ross, you can count on Irmo to be right behind you. I'm excited about it. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.